What is up, Summit Park Church? How y'all doing? That's what I'm talking about. Hey, I just wanted to say a quick welcome to everybody who is watching at the North Campus and the South Campus, South Side, and everybody watching online. Come on, everybody everywhere. Can we make some noise for everybody who's tuning in on the interwebs, watching? That's what I'm talking about. We are just so pumped to be here on a Thanksgiving weekend. Did you guys have a good Thanksgiving weekend here at the North Campus, South Campus? Online, maybe you can type in some turkey legs, or I guess it'd be the chicken leg, right? It'd be whatever leg it is, okay? It's going to be good. Because Thanksgiving is incredible. It's one of my favorite holidays ever because carbs, okay? That's why there's so many great things about Thanksgiving. And how many of you know that this year, Thanksgiving looked a little bit different? Maybe you had a smaller crowd at your house. If not, your neighbors might call 311 on you. But you might have a smaller crowd at your house, but the portions of food stayed the same. Is that true for anybody else? Like, you made the same amount of food, and so when you were done, there was we didn't even put a dent in this food, right? You should all be ashamed of yourselves, and I am too. It also made us eat a lot more food. And we might have gained the COVID-19 this year, and that is true. So, but it's Thanksgiving, and man, I'm so pumped about Christmas. Is anybody else excited about Christmas coming up? I am very excited, and you could be the person who doesn't listen to Christmas music until after Thanksgiving. Who in here, North Campus, South Campus, online, you can type it in the chat. You say, it's not okay to listen to Christmas music before Thanksgiving, okay? I used to be one of those people. I am redeemed, and I am forgiven because I am no longer a Grinch, okay? As a single guy, I said things happen in order, okay? Things are beautiful in their time, not prematurely, okay? Things are beautiful in their time. You need to appreciate Thanksgiving. But then I got married, okay? And I reserve the right to get smarter, okay, as a husband. And so we start celebrating Christmas at Halloween, okay? Decorations go up. We start listening to music, Christmas music, and it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. We've got Christmas at Summit Park coming up December 23rd. Wanted to highlight that again, and 24th here at the North Campus. So you want to make sure and come. It's going to be jolly. It's going to be a jolly time. I have no other word to use, so I'm just going to use jolly. It's going to be amazing. And I also wanted to encourage you with your first gift. I know Black Friday just happened. You might have done some Christmas shopping. Man, we are blessed to be a blessing. Amen? So we want to make sure that as we ourselves are giving gifts to each other, man, let's let that first gift be to somebody in need, and God's going to bless you for it, and it's going to be great. Okay, so we're in this sermon series called Greater Faith. And have you guys not loved this sermon series? It's been so encouraging, but it's been challenging to our faith. I know Caitlin, my wife, and me, it's been so building of our faith. And it's been encouraging and challenging to our faith, and we've been kind of walking through Hebrews chapter 11. So this is like the hall of faith, okay? So these are the best of the faith. And so it's been encouraging us to read about these people who had great moments of faith. And the context of it is Hebrews chapter 10, and in verse 39, we've read it every single week. If you don't have it memorized by now, then you should probably get on that. But Hebrews 10:39, it says, "But we do not belong to those who shrink back and are destroyed, but to those who have faith and are," say it with me, "saved." So what the writer of Hebrews is saying is we have two options, okay? We have two options. You can either be destroyed or you can be saved, okay? How many of us want to be saved, right? Like that, if that's the option, of course. I choose option B. I want to be saved, right? So we can either shrink back and be destroyed, or we can push forward and we can be saved. We can actually shy away and be destroyed, or we can lean into faith and we can be saved. So that's what we've been learning about. If you're taking notes today, and I hope that you are on the Summit Park Church app. If you haven't downloaded that yet, you should do that. Shameless plug. Get it out there in the App Store. It's so good. If you're taking notes today, and I hope that you are, because everybody knows note takers are history makers. They're world changers. You get bonus points in heaven for taking notes, okay, in church. It's true. You get extra chicken nuggets in heaven, okay? If you take notes in church, it's true. It's in the Bible. If you don't believe me, download the app. We have the Bible on there, okay? Then you can write down, if you're taking notes, the title of the message today, which is When Greater Faith Falls. When Greater Faith Falls. We're going to be talking about a guy named Samson today. I want to introduce you to a guy named Samson. And Samson was very, very strong, and he had a supernatural strength, but he handled it with a natural perspective, okay? And so he's actually mentioned in Hebrews 11. So he's in the Hall of Faith, Samson, okay? Now, here's an important disclaimer about this Hall of Faith. The people who were mentioned in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11, it's not that they were perfect. This is a very important disclaimer. They did not live perfect lives. They had massive moments of faith, okay? So that's important to understand. And so in knowing Samson, that's really important to know about him because to me, it's kind of crazy that the writer of Hebrews would include Samson in the Hall of Faith. Because you look at his life, we're going to be looking at his life, the way that he lived, and it's kind of crazy to think of it because the way that he lived his life was not honoring to the Lord, but he had some massive moments of faith, and God honored him for that faith. It actually reminds me of some famous people that we'll see on TV or we'll see headlines about them, and we've seen this all the time. People like this who, they're larger than life people with big personalities. They can kind of seem untouchable, right? They might have all the money in the world, all the power in the world, and the resources, but they might have had some major legal issue or a moral failure, and that's what they're remembered by, right? Like we always remember the one bad thing more than we do a lifetime of acclimates and accomplishments. That's just kind of how the human nature works. And so it reminds me of Mike Tyson. Anybody know who Mike Tyson is? So he just had a fight last night. Homie is 54 years old, and he is still fighting professionally, okay? So that's an accomplishment in and of itself. But what you might not know about Mike Tyson is that he was one of the youngest ever at 20 years old to win an undisputed heavyweight championship. And then his reign lasted 3 years as the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing. Some people say he was one of the best fighters, the best boxers in all of history. Like he is one of the best, he's one of the greatest of all time. That's not what he's known for, right? What Mike Tyson is known for is, you can say it, biting a dude's ear off, right? And now he's marked by this, a face tattoo, right? Like he now, people know him as the guy who bit off an ear and then got a tattoo on his face. That's how Mike Tyson is known. And we see people like this all the time. Even as I'm talking, you're probably thinking to yourself about some famous person who was really good in their craft, or they were really good in their profession, but when you think of them, they're marked by a fall or a failure. This is Samson. This is exactly who we're talking about today in Samson. And this leads me to the big idea today, which is greater faith overcomes the fall. You can write that down. Greater faith overcomes the fall. So in this Greater Faith series, we've talked a lot about the Israelite people and how God delivered the Israelite people from slavery in Egypt, and he literally led them through the wilderness to the promised land, and then they got to actually live in the promised land. And so God was supposed to be their king, but it didn't actually work out that way. Once God had taken them from captivity and led them into the promised land, they started doing their own thing. And they stopped referring to God as king. In fact, this is what happened in Samson's life. We find Samson in the period of the Judges because what would happen is the Israelite people got into a cycle of not listening to the Lord. And so they would do what they thought was right, and they would mess everything up. And so then God would actually hand them over to their enemies, and they would be in captivity again. And then the Lord would have to select who was called a judge to deliver his people once again. And this cycle continued to the point to where at the end of Judges, the Israelite people were actually described like this. Judges 17, verse 6. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So this is what happened. This is what brings us to the period of the judges. Now, as Scott talked about last week, we introduced a judge named Gideon. And so as he was talking about Gideon, I really encourage you to go back and watch that message on the app or on our YouTube page. It's really, really good. I think everybody can actually look at Gideon and they can see a little bit of themselves in Gideon. He was led by fear. And so I think that would really apply to a lot of people. Go back and watch it. It's super great. But Scott was talking about judges and how the judges aren't what we think about with like the people's court, right? Or like what we think about what a judge is. So think less Judge Judy and more Wyatt Earp, okay? So like think less people's court and more like Old Town Road, right? Like this was a sheriff deputy who was not only notifying you of the justice, but he was carrying it out himself. And so this is what would happen. Israelite people would do what they do. God had to send a judge to deliver them. They praise God, they thank God, and then they would go back to doing what they did. And it completely messed everything up. And the crazy thing is the people that God was sending, these judges, every single time that God would provide a judge, they would become further and further away from the Lord themselves as the judge. That's what brings us to Samson. So God was selecting these judges to deliver his people to the point where he's like, this is not working. They're delivering the people, but they're further and further away from the Lord. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to appoint somebody from birth. And that was Samson. God literally grew one from scratch. He said, okay, I can't select and appoint anybody right now because you guys are way too messed up. So I'm actually going to appoint somebody from birth. And Samson was supposed to be set apart his entire life. In fact, God said, this is going to be Samson who's going to take the lead in delivering my people. So because of that, he's going to have to live differently. He's going to be set apart. So we put a Nazirite vow onto Samson's life. So an angel appeared to this woman, Samson's mom. She was barren. She couldn't have children. Okay, this is very important to know. So it was a miracle that Samson was even born in the first place. So God appeared to them, and here's what he said. You will become pregnant, first miracle, and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor. Because the boy is to be a Nazirite. Here's what that means. That means he wasn't going to shave his head. He wasn't supposed to drink any alcohol or any strong drink. So I guess I don't know if Coke Zero existed back in the day. I don't know if that's strong enough. But he couldn't touch any alcohol. He also couldn't touch any dead things because that was unclean. He was set apart his entire life, dedicated to God from the womb. His entire life was supposed to be set apart. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. So Samson was literally set apart his entire life and given supernatural strength. But then he handled his supernatural strength with a natural perspective. And we're going to learn what happens when you and I are given gifts by God and we handle them with our own natural perspective. Here's the first thing that we can learn from Samson. Greater faith falls when you don't appreciate your strength. Greater faith falls when you don't appreciate your strength. So because of Samson's Nazirite vow, his mom was forbidden from drinking alcohol and eating any unclean food while Samson was in her womb. Judges 13, 24, and 25. The woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Maneah Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. So this is what happened. That's all we got of Samson's childhood. Okay, so we have to use our imagination. How many of you know that there are some things that happen in the white spaces of Scripture, right? So you just have to imagine what it was like for Samson as a child, right? Like raising Samson. Parents, can you even believe, like, can you even comprehend what it would have been like to raise Samson, right? Like, Samson, can you help me move this table? And he picks it up himself and takes it into the garage. Like, Samson, can you vacuum under the bed? And he's like, yeah, sure, got it. Lifts up the bed, starts vacuuming under the bed, Or like, can you imagine Samson on a Mighty Might football team? I'm just telling you this. He would have had 8 touchdowns, 400 yards every single game with the entire team on his back. And so how many of you know that with great strength and an immature perspective, that doesn't mix well? So Samson, his entire life, had this supernatural strength, but he began to be entitled. He began to have a natural perspective about his supernatural strength, and he didn't appreciate his strength. So that's all we understand of Samson. He had this supernatural gift, but handled it with a natural perspective. So I think that all of us can relate to Samson in this respect. Each and every one of us have been born with a gift given by God. So all of us have strength. Now, our strength isn't like Samson's strength, but our strength is a purpose that God's placed on our life, and he's given us these gifts. For you, it could be the family that you were born into. That could be your strength. Maybe other people look at it and they say, well, that's not fair for you. Maybe you were born with gifts or with talents, abilities, right? Like we all have a strength about our life that has been given to us by God. And when other people look at it, would say that's not fair. And actually, as human beings with the human sinful nature and the human condition, we can take it for granted. I'm sure you've heard the stat before, but even the poorest person in America is wealthier than 80% of the world. And some stats even say that's a higher percentage. So we think to ourselves, man, what I've been given, we start to be entitled. We start to take it for granted, and that's exactly what Samson was doing. As he was being raised, he had this pride. He had this arrogance about his life, and we'll find that later on. But as the parents, they would tell him one thing, and he would do another. And the thing is, he just had this perspective that I can do anything. If I wanted, I could rip somebody apart with my bare hands. And we know that that's true because we look at a story in Judges 14, verses 5 and 6. It says they approached the vineyards of Timnah. Suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn apart a young goat. I don't know how easy it is to tear apart a goat. Apparently it's pretty easily, okay? So like Samson literally, he wasn't just strong, he was strong. He was emphasized strong. He had a supernatural strength about it, but he looked at his strength with a natural perspective. He didn't truly appreciate where his strength came from. He didn't truly appreciate the humility that has to come from within our hearts to truly appreciate the gift God has given us. And here's what happens. Here's what happens when we don't appreciate our strengths. When you don't appreciate your strength, you're more susceptible to your struggles. Here's the reality. Each and every one of us have struggles. And it's different. Your struggles are different than the person sitting right next to you. Your struggles at South Campus are different than the person right in front of you. Your struggles you are watching online is different than the person in the other room. Our struggles are our struggles. And the enemy knows exactly what our struggles are. And when you don't truly appreciate what God has given you, when you allow entitlement to raise up in your own life, when you allow this self-sustaining perspective that you think you can handle it by yourself, when you allow that to take over, you are more susceptible to the struggles that you have inside of you. And this is what Samson was doing. He actually developed these vices in his life from an early age. So when he was younger, he developed them, and when it was left unchecked, it continued to build. And so the vices that Samson had in his life, the struggles were pride, they were arrogance, and they were compromise. And Samson had these from a young age. So he had all this wit, he had this charm about him, he had this charisma. And I think this is true of us too. Sometimes our charisma can take us to a place that our character can't keep us. Our charisma can take us on this journey, and it can take us to a point that our character it's not strong enough to hold us there. What's going to happen? We're going to fall. It's exactly what happens with us. When we allow entitlement in our life to raise up, when we don't appreciate the strength that God has given us, we begin to develop these struggles. And for him, that's what he had done. He allowed these struggles to continue to develop. He developed pride. In Judges 14, verse 3, this is right after he tells his parents, I want to marry this woman. They tell him no. And so this is how they reply. His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the one for me. She's the right one for me. Samson, again, what did we learn? And later on in the chapter, they had no king, and they did what was right in their own eyes. That's exactly what Samson's doing. He's not listening to the people in his life that care about him and who know better. That's exactly what we do. Pride begins to develop in our own lives. He developed arrogance. So this is absolutely crazy. This story is crazy. He had this wit, he had this charm, and while he was at the wedding feast of the woman that he shouldn't have married, right? He's getting himself into trouble time and time again. He had this pride, but he also had this arrogance. So while he was at the wedding feast, there are these people there that he probably didn't know very well. We've all been there. You're at your wedding, and you're like, never met you, but thanks for the toaster, right? Like, so he's there, and he looks at these people, and these guys, he finds them, and he's like, hey, I've got a riddle for you, okay? And here, it's just so weird and crazy. The lion that he had killed, okay, when he was on his way, he later passed by that lion. And he had noticed that a bee had come and they had set up a hive. And so there was actually honey inside the carcass of this lion. And so he actually bent down and he scooped some honey out and he ate it. Remember his Nazirite vow. He wasn't supposed to touch anything that was dead because it was unclean to him. But he did, and that was compromise. He's allowing compromise in his life, and it's developing. Not only is he allowing these things to happen, but now he's playing with them. He's playing with his struggles. He's playing with his vices, okay? So he used the one thing that he's compromising, and now he's making a game out of it. So he creates this riddle. He's like, okay, hey, I've got a riddle. And if you can get this riddle right, I'll bet you all of the clothes off of your back and your underwear and your shoes, okay? So if you can get this riddle right, then I'm going to go get 30 pairs of clothes and I'll give them to you. But if you get it wrong, if you can't figure out what this riddle is coming from or what the answer is, then I actually get the clothes off of your back. And here was the riddle. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. And so the answer of that was obviously the honey that was in the lion's carcass. He developed this arrogance. So again, he has this bet. He places this bet with them, right? And so they try and they try and they try and they're not figuring out this riddle. And so what they do is they go to Samson's new wife and they threaten to kill her and her family if she doesn't find the answer out, okay? So now this game that he's playing is very dangerous. What he has allowed in his life, and now he's playing with the danger. He's playing with the struggle. It doesn't only affect him. It's affecting now the people that he loves. It's affecting his wife. So now she goes to Samson and she's like, hey, they're going to kill me if you don't tell me the answer. So like she's like crying and she's freaking out. And she's like, you got to tell me the answer. If you love me, you got to tell me the answer. And so Samson gives in. Again, he's developing this compromise. So now it's affecting way more people. He gives her the answer. They come back. They fulfill the riddle, and they give him the right answer. And so because of that, now he's got to pay up on his bet. So what he does is he goes and finds 30 other Philistines, kills them, strips them of their clothes, and delivers on his bet. So now he's ticked. But to make matters worse, his father-in-law is like, I don't like him. He's not smart, and he's not good for my daughter. Actually gives his daughter away to another man. So now Samson's even more mad. So he decides in a swirling dervish of anger to now go find 300 foxes, set their tails on fire, and burns the whole city to the ground, okay? And so now they're upset with him even more so, and the Philistines go find his now ex-wife and her dad, and they burn their house down, or what the remnants of it remained. And so Samson retaliates. He gets mad again, kills a great number, is what the Bible tells us. And then later, because he's still frustrated, takes a jawbone of a donkey and kills 1,000 men, okay? So now, because of one act of stupidity, because he was playing with his struggle, because he thought it was cute, he thought he could get himself out of it. Now he's relying on his own strength, and he has zero willpower. Have you ever met anybody with zero willpower? They probably were sitting across from you at the Thanksgiving dinner table, right? Like, I am one of those people. I am happy to admit I'm a recovering Texas Roadhouse roll addict, okay? And I have a problem. I am 8 hours clean. And so I have zero willpower. And here's what we know about willpower. This is from a PhD psychologist from Stanford Health. This is what she says. People who use willpower seem to run out of it. Interestingly, an act of self-control leaves people with less willpower for completely unrelated challenges. Trying to control your temper, ignore distractions, or refuse seconds at Thanksgiving all tap into the source of strength. The research also shows that willpower decreases over the course of the day as your energy gets spent on stress and self-control. This has become known as the muscle model of willpower. Like your biceps or your quads, the willpower muscle can get exhausted from effort. How many of you know that Samson was not allowing, if willpower is a well and you fill it every day, and it gets depleted at night. This is actually why online shopping tends to increase at night, right? This is why TV shopping, this is why they run their ads late at night, is because willpower actually decreases throughout the day. Samson wasn't ever allowing his well of willpower to fill up every single day, but he continued to play. This muscle of willpower, he never exercised it. Because he had the struggles, but they were left unchecked. And if anybody was going to say anything to him about it, he would literally kill them. That's the way he was living his life. He was never allowing his willpower to grow. Samson didn't learn from his mistakes, or he didn't learn from the weaknesses, the vices, the struggles, or the terrible willpower. We actually see these vices come back, and with more strength, and it carried much more weight and affected much more people. Because he hadn't learned from his past mistakes, he finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his willpower is at an all-time low. And get this, what once worked doesn't work this time. It doesn't get him out of it. After he was married and his ex-wife was killed, he's wandering around. He's trying to look in all the wrong places to fulfill his life. He finds a prostitute and he sleeps with her. And he's looking at all of these. He's continued to develop pride and arrogance and compromise. And when that doesn't fulfill him, he goes back and he tries to find another wife from the enemy's territory and village. This is what happens. He finds a woman, and this wife he's most famously known to be married by, her name is, say it with me, Delilah. Hey there, Delilah, right? There's been parodies written about this relationship because it was so jacked up. I'm telling you, this is crazy. So he gets married to a woman named Delilah. And the Philistines, they actually offer her 1,100 pieces of silver if she can find the source of Samson's strength. And so she asks Samson, because she's a gold digger, okay? And so she goes to Samson, and she asks him, Samson, what's the source of your strength? Hey, I'm your wife now. We don't share any secrets with each other, okay? So like, I've told you everything about me, okay? You know it all. You know about Tiffany. You know about Jake. You know about everything, okay? You got to tell me, what's the source of your strength? And so, because Samson has relied before on his pride, on his arrogance, on his wit, on his charm, he starts to play a game with her. And he starts to tell her the source of his strength. So Samson tells her that he would become weak if she bound him with new cords. So what does she do? They go and they find new cords, and as he fell asleep, they wrapped him up with new cords, and then she had made an announcement to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you, because the Philistines were going to come and capture him. But he broke out of the new cords, and he killed them all, and he was playing a really freaky game, like a really jacked up game is what he was doing. So Delilah comes back to him again, and she actually makes him feel bad for telling him the wrong thing. How jacked up is this? And Samson continues to play the game. So Samson told her to weave his locks of hair into a loom. If he says, if my hair is weaved into a loom, I don't know if this was fruit of the loom. I don't know what material they use for the loom. But he said, it's gone. My strength's gone if you do this. So again, she betrays him. She tries to betray him, ties his hair up in a loom, and then she announces, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And again, he gets up, he kills him because he's relying on his own strength. So Delilah came back with a vengeance. Okay, let's look at this in verse 15 and 16 of chapter 16. Then she said to him, Samson, how can you say I love you when you don't confide in me? I told you about my ex-boyfriend, Jake. This is the third time you made me a fool out of me, and you haven't told me the secret of your strength. And with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Husbands, don't raise your hand for the love. Okay, this is nagging to the nth degree. So Samson literally, because of being nagged by his wife, gives up the source of his strength. He gives it to her. So then she goes and she reports back to the Philistines, hey, if he cuts his hair, then it's going to go down. And so they do. She puts him to sleep, and then she actually shaves his head. Then they tie him up. Let's look at verse 20. Then she called, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He woke up from his sleep and thought, I'll go out before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. See, Samson had lived his entire life up to this point, relying on his own strength. And he developed a pride. He developed an arrogance. And he developed compromise. And that compromise that he gave in to his wife, it ultimately stripped him of the one purpose that he was here, created on planet Earth to be here for, and that was his strength. He was stripped of it because he didn't appreciate the strength that God had given him. He was susceptible to the struggles. And when you are susceptible time after time again, when you play with fire, you're going to get burned. When you play around where it's slippery, you're going to get wet. It's what happens. And when you're susceptible to the struggles, you're going to fall. It's not if, it's when. And here's what happens when we fall. We tend to think, man, this is all my fault. It's all over. I've failed too hard. I've fallen too low. This is too many times. But watch the grace of God. Watch the goodness of God. This is 2 verses later. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. I've got good news for you today. You can be encouraged with this. Even after we've fallen. When your faith falls, there is a greater grace for you. It's not if you fall, it's when. And I'm telling you, we are all imperfect people on an imperfect journey. Where? Towards a perfect God. And the only way that happens is when our greater faith overcomes the fall. Let's look at this in Judges 16, verses 26 through 30. Samson said to the servant who held his hand, what does that tell us? He's in slavery. Samson, the one who was born to be set apart, to deliver the Israelite people out of captivity, out of slavery. The one reason that he was put on this earth, he now finds himself fallen. And he can't be the answer because he's the problem. So they seize him, they gouge out his eyes, and they put him on display to perform for the people. Said, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple so that I may lean against them. Now at the temple there was a crowd with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just this once more. And let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines. Then Samson reached toward the two center pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the other, his left on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And get this, then he pushed with all his might. And down came the temple on the rulers and on the people in it. Thus, he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Let me tell you this, God is a good God, and greater faith overcomes the fall. And you are not the problem, but Jesus is the answer. And it just takes one act of greater faith to carry ultimate redemption. God wants to do good in and through your life. Let me tell you this today. God has a purpose for your life. And just like Samson, you have a gift. You have a strength that's from God. It's a purpose. And here's the good news. Paul says later on in Romans 8:28 that we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. I'm going to leave that up. And we know that in all things, somebody say all things. Somebody else say all things. That means in your success and in your failure. That means in your strength and in your struggle. God is working on your behalf for the good because he's called you for a purpose. He's called you for great things. And even in the midst of our failure, greater faith overcomes the fall. Would you pray with me? God, we come before you today, and Lord, we're thankful. We're thankful that, Lord, you are a good God who does good. And one act of faith can bring ultimate redemption on our lives. Lord, and we pray that we would adequately respond to this today. And Lord, that we would take a step of faith. In Jesus' name, with heads bowed and eyes closed, all across the North Campus, at the South Campus. If you're watching online, just put yourself in a posture to respond to this today. You know, Samson was set apart from birth to save God's people. When God was knitting him together in the mother's womb, he was set apart. But guess what? Samson fell short and he failed. So he couldn't save all of God's people. One act of faith, it actually did live up to his purpose, but he couldn't save all of us. He was imperfect. He messed up. He failed. He fell short. But you know, there was somebody else in the line of David who would come, and the Lord would appoint him from birth, and he would live a perfect life so that he could be the perfect sacrifice. He had struggles. He had temptations. He had fears. He had doubts, but he lived a perfect life. And his name is Jesus. God sent him, and he was a sacrifice for you and for me, and he actually desires a relationship with you and me. And I'm going to be honest with you. Some of you might have been sitting through today, and you might feel like Samson. You might feel like, hey, I've done too much. My beliefs don't line up enough. I've done too much wrong. I've fallen too many times. I've failed too badly. I've got good news for you today. Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice for you, and now he wants to be your best friend. So if you're here at the North Campus, the South Campus, if you're watching online, you say, Zach, I'm not right with God today, but I want to be. I want to give my life, and I want to make a decision to follow him. Would you just simply do this? Would you just raise your hand and look up at me long enough for me to see it? Then you can put it down. Thanks. Thank you. Who else in here? Thank you. Say, Zach, that's me. I'm not right with God, but I want to be. I want to experience the freedom that comes with a relationship with this great God. You just raise your hand and look up at me long enough for me to see it. Then you can put it down. It's awesome. Thank you. Who else here at the North Campus, at the South Campus? You just raise your hand. Say, Zach, that's me. Online, you can put it in the chat. That's me. It's amazing. Thank you. Praise God. Can we do this? All across this room, can we stand to our feet? South Campus, can you stand? Now, there's another group of people that I want to talk to you today. If you didn't raise your hand and make a decision, then I can assume that you already have a relationship with God. Here's the reality. It's not if, it's when you fall. We are imperfect people on an imperfect journey towards a perfect God. And the only way that at the end of our life that we're going to say, I lived a life that was pleasing to God, is when we get out of our own way and we rely on God. It's when we can take a step of greater faith to overcome the fall. All across this room, would you just lift your hands towards heaven? It's a sign of surrender at the South Campus. And even when we can't see it, even when we don't feel that God is working, he has a miracle of the purpose for your life. Let's worship together.